bolus stones, sometimes even in groups of 3 perfectly spherical stones, and they say, well, clearly this required some sort of clever man to do it, and that's part of the reason why he's Homo habilis, because he's been found with tools. But a lot of these creatures, like Pekin man, have been found with tools, but the tools belonged to Homo sapiens, who was about at the same time, probably using these for food.
I think Homo habilis is a bit of a mess, and I think scientists are realising this, that there are at least 2 separate species, possibly more, that have been called Homo habilis in the past, but actually don't really belong together. And some of these forms of what we call the habilines are very slender, they're very small, they're very ape-like, they have very Australopithecine-like skulls, and they probably are just a variant kind of Australopithecine. And then there are other forms that have also been called habilis, which are much more human-like, and some people suspect that they may actually be true humans. And what's happened, I think, is that there's been a bit of a wastebasket where anything that isn't Australopithecine or isn't erectus kind of gets lumped in this Homo habilis category, and it really is a mess, and scientists are beginning to kind of pick it apart and realise that actually a number of different species have been put into this taxonomic wastebasket, and they don't really belong together.
Okay, we could just mention this famous 1470 skull, which is best discarded because you can't really make anything definitive out of it. Anyway, you can make it an ape if you want, you can make it human if you want, but I'll just show this slide again quickly. You see the way this specimen was found was that the face was only joined to, you could only join the face to the skull by a small piece above the nose, and so you could angulate the face backwards or forwards into a long snout of a chimpanzee or a flat face of a human. So there's no way of defining exactly how this face was put together, but there is a definite feature. If you look at the cheekbones on this skull, you can see they're very, very deep. They're very different from human cheekbones, which are much slender and thin. But aside from that, you wanted to mention something about the radiometric dating of it,
because of the dating of this. They were found by Richard and Meave Leakey in the north of Kenya at this lake, and they sent volcanic tuffs associated with this, because there's no radioactivity in the skull itself, but they were buried in volcanic material.
And tuff, what's a volcanic tuff?
It's ash, volcanic
ash,
right,
which can contain radiometric material, particularly with potassium-40 in it, which decomposes to, one part goes to calcium and one part goes to argon, but it's called the potassium-argon method of dating. They sent it to London to be dated, and it came back with a date of 220 million years, which of course makes it ridiculous. They sent it back again and said, no, can you try again? And they picked out particular mineral crystals and dated them, and came up with 2.6 million years, so that's 2 orders of magnitude difference, and they were fairly pleased with that. Another group made them 1.9 million years, which is more than 500,000 years difference, which is quite a lot. But what it shows is that the dating method is of very little, well, no use at all, actually.
Might be worth mentioning that we mentioned the taxonomic waste bin. Again, that's an evolutionist view. The big camp among the evolutionists who take the view it is something, Homo habilis should just be junked, because it's a junk category. But there are another group of people who've tried to keep that because it's the only thing that really has linked potentially the human fossils, and even evolutionists would call Homo erectus, Homo heidelbergensis, Box-Grove man was an example of that, and Neanderthals, Cro-Magnon man, they'd call those human. That's why they're Homo. And there's nothing to link those with Australopithecines and the other ape-like extinct apes. So Homo habilis, people have been loath to let it go. But a paper published on the 9th of August this year in Nature, foremost science journal Nature, by a number of leading anthropologists, about 12 of them altogether, including Meave Leakey and Fred Spoor, leading lights, basically said we found 2 new skulls. One is two new bones. One is a skull. It's a small skull. We think it's Homo erectus, but it's smaller than any skull we've found, so we think that means it's a first female Homo erectus skull. And then we found a jawbone, and a part of the upper jawbone, the maxilla, and we think that's Homo habilis. So we believe in I'm paraphrasing, but they said we believe in Homo habilis. But the trouble is, with what we found, Homo habilis jawbone was younger, by their dating methods, 1.44 million years, younger than the Homo erectus skull they dated. And that means, they said, that Homo habilis cannot possibly be an ancestor to Homo erectus and humans, because Homo habilis overlapped Homo erectus in time by 500,000 years. So you've got one camp of evolutionists saying Homo habilis is a junk category, so it doesn't exist. The other camp are now saying it exists, but it had nothing to do with human evolution. It was a side shoot going off into nowhere. So what you're left with, in the state of the art, based on a paper in journal Nature August this year, is absolutely nothing at all to link ape-sized remains. These creatures are mainly sort of 3 feet tall, approximately, like Lucy. A skull size of an ape would be about 350 to 400 centimetres cubed, or cc, compared to the range of modern humans is about 700 to 2,200. So nothing at all to link apes with humans. Nothing in between. So, the actual fossil data, I think this is quite exciting as a Christian, confirms exactly what we all believe from Scripture.
Okay, let's quickly have a look at some Homo erectus specimens, and here's a slide of the most complete Homo erectus specimen we know, the so-called Turkana boy found in northern Kenya. And this specimen, if you look from the neck downwards, has got a completely human skeleton, indistinguishable from... but the skull, and there's a side view of the skull. Skull's got a sloping forehead and big brows, and that gives a suggestion to people that this is in some way subhuman. It's on its way to... It had a human-like body, but its brain and head hadn't quite got there yet.
There are people in Malaysia who have skulls very similar pattern to that.
They've got people in Bognor Regis with skulls similar. I'll show you that in a minute. There's the question is, does a sloping forehead and a large brow mean that you're on your way to becoming human, or you're subhuman?
Well, the viewers start looking at one another.
Yes, right. Here's an X-ray of somebody I bumped into in Bognor Hospital there, and I was really excited because I saw the X-ray first, and someone showed me the X-ray and said, "Look, got this X-ray. What can you see?" I think might have banged his head or something. And I was really excited because it's got a really big brow. I'm not sure you can see it on the X-ray on the screen there, but really big brow. So I saw the X-ray. I thought it must be a Homo erectus sitting in the waiting room, and so I rushed round and there's I've blacked out or greyed out the face a little bit. But once you put the skin, this is an important point. Once you put the skin on these bones, you find that they're not as unhuman as you might first think, and that gives us the stepping stone to that classical thing about Neanderthals. If you dressed them up in suits and things, you wouldn't be able to distinguish them, really, would you? So there's a big eyebrow, and you find them in living humans. Just to clarify the point, here's a chimpanzee skull, which is sectioned, and you can see the huge brow, and the brow has got the frontal sinus in there, which clogs up when you get a cold, and so your voice drops.
So it's gorilla there, Vij, is it?
That's a gorilla, yeah. Well,
right.
Did I say chimpanzee?
You said chimp, yeah.
Yeah, it's a gorilla. Okay. And so you've got a big brow, and there's the frontal sinus, and if you look of the front end of the brain case, the front end of the brain case doesn't follow the line of the brow. It's got nothing to do with it. So you can enlarge and change and swap and move around the brow without affecting the brain itself. So the brain has got nothing to do with the brow. And
does the brow support muscles for chewing, for instance?
Not the brow itself. The chewing muscles attached to the side on the temporal temporal bone, really. And here's a slide. We haven't got time to hear the audio really, but here's what's his name, Alan Walker on the Ape Man series, and he's holding this skull on the side there, and he's saying basically, look, this skull's got no forehead, so it's not human. See, I've got